I don't keep blocking you.
I've just stopped via these on the way.
You're quarantined because you got whooping cough. Okay, so has somebody already pressed the record for me? I think it's going now. Right. Well, hello everybody, and I've been here 1 year now, believe it or not. So I've been asked to talk about refractive aim for cataract surgery. And this is kind of specifically for the setup here, not in the private sector because the mentality of private patients are very different. Okay. And if you want a copy of the book either in English or Chinese, let me know. I can send that to you. It's a textbook on cataract surgery.
Portuguese?
No
Portuguese?
No Portuguese. Ukrainian. Okay, so I think before we start, could those the people who list cataract surgery, please list immediately sequential bilateral cataract surgery, because every single patient, almost without fail, if I ask them, have you been, the unilateral ones, have you been offered bilateral cataract surgery? Almost universally they would say no. And then, they might have recalled incorrectly, and then I said, I would ask them, if you had been offered, would you have taken it? And invariably, the answer is yes. Okay, so if we take this approach of ISBCS, we will have more eyes on the waiting list, but fewer patients. And after getting through the initial hump, then there will be fewer patients and fewer eyes because they don't need to come back. And it's so much more efficient doing both eyes at the same time. The reality is that they might say, oh yeah, my good eye is good, but you look at it and it's full of cataracts, and you know that the good eye will become the bad eye, once you've done the first one. And then special indication for high refractive areas, because people cannot stand 5 diopters of an anisometropy. It's just not possible. Okay, so again, before we start, these are just prerequisites that we should use optimized constants. So you've got your A constant for your SRK, whatever. But also the other formulae, they will have other constants which are optimized. You might be better off over there, because you can't see them here. So these can be downloaded. We don't actually have to do the optimization ourselves. We can do if we want to, but it's already done elsewhere, and so we just need to use them either from IOL-Con or from the old ULIP website. And ULIP kind of died together with Wolfgang Hages, but there is a new website, IOL-Con, which is manned by somebody called Achim Lankenbucher, also in Germany. So obviously you want to use an appropriate IOL formula for the eye involved, and then there are short eyes, long eyes, post-LASIK eyes, etc. And then later on we might think about using the Barrett True K formula, because that is actually very good. And I think, I can't remember whether we have IOL Master 700. Not yet.
Hopefully the word is yet.
Okay. Well, when it comes, that we have to move with the times. Okay. So then I would also say that I've always advocated is that try and just use one lens, and 2 if necessary, because then everybody is familiar with the same thing, and everybody has an experience with it. Because every time we choose an IOL, change an IOL, there will be a spate of capsule ruptures, because you're not used to the lens. And also a reputable manufacturer, because if there's a problem, then they have the means to pay out. And also good local service. So you can have a very big manufacturer, but if the local service is no good, you can't phone up and say, I need this, help me with this, then that's no good either.
So do you like Rayner, Christopher?
I like Rayner, but I mustn't talk about products, even here, because I don't want to show my bias. But yes, I like Rayner. Right. So when it comes to toric implants, it is important not to, if you're a good person, you'd also get pentacam scans just in case they've actually got irregular astigmatism, and not just so don't just calculate from the IOL master. Get started.
Just hit X, maybe just to.
We need to press join, because is this not being recorded?
It's recording there. Okay, so we're going to get started with the talk. Refractive aim for hypermetropic eyes. Rosie, you're the cataract lead and you're hypermetropic. What's the answer to this? What?
It's hateful being hypermetropic.
It's his, isn't it? Would you like to stay hypermetropic?
Never want to be anything other than myopic or emmetropic, but myopic end.
Really?
Yes, I don't find any advantage. I don't even like the microphone.
Okay, so we have a rare species here who's a hyperopic person who wants to become myopic post-op. Anyway.
Minus 0.25.
Okay, so shall we call that emmetropic, rather than...
Okay.
Yeah?
That sounds offensive.
Okay, so for this, I think basically I think without fail, emmetropia. Whether you want to aim for that tiny bits of myopia, that's your personal preference. And also there's sometimes people think that, okay, if I aim for myopia, in my experience, I actually get 0. So there's that as well. But if you actually use optimized constants, then you won't have to do that personal fudge. An exception is if the first eye, somebody's already chosen to match the second eye, the first eye has been done, and it's let's say, okay, +5, and the eye you're operating on is also +5, then you can't make that 0, because then you're going to have to go back to the first eye and do some adjustment. Okay? So if it's a first eye or bilateral, essentially you will be looking at emmetropia. I mean, is everybody agreed on this? Yeah. Okay, do you want me to carry on with something slightly trickier now? Okay, the next trick. Oh, wait a second, I think I lost something. Okay, so this also applies for emmetropic eyes. For emmetropic eyes, we aim for emmetropia. Right, the next bit, moderate myopia. Let's look for an example here. I think you passed moderate.
-5.5.
Oh, actually, that is still kind of moderate. But let's consider another situation, like you're about -2.
Nice emmetropic.
Okay, you're not a good example.
No.
Yeah,
No.
-3.
you're -3. You're an excellent example. Okay, so what is the key question to ask a patient, like our friend from Orkney? So anybody want to volunteer as to?
Do you want to be able to read without your glasses on still?
Well, yes, but actually they already do that unless the cataracts are really bad. So the question is actually, do you want to retain that ability, okay? So that is the one key question, and if they say yes, then don't convert them, do not do conversion therapy and change them to an emmetrope. They will not thank you for that. They say, I can't read anymore. Okay? So that's very simple. So now, if we go on to high myopia,
What if they want to be spectacle free?
we'll come to that. We'll come to that.
Yeah,
We'll
like
come to that. We have to first go in through the normal tunnels first, and then when we get into the rabbit warren, then we'll go through different things.
because my glasses get smeary when I go cycling, and
Yeah,
I want to be spectacle free.
got you. Okay,
Okay.
we'll come to that, okay?
Mhm.
So high myopia, do we have examples here?
Simon.
Simon,
Moderate.
No.
listen, I think you're more than -5. You're just very modest.
-5.5.
Okay, all right, let's say if you were -10,
Yeah.
what do you expect me to ask you before I offer you cataract surgery? What questions?
Do you want to be less short-sighted?
That's the second question. What would be the first question?
Do you want to throw away glasses?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's the second part of the talk.
Ah.
Okay, so does anybody want
I'm
to...
getting those eyes down.
Right, okay, so...
What's the job?
No, wait, okay, so I'm trying to reduce this just to 2 questions, okay?
Mhm.
So the first question should be, do you want to retain the ability to examine tiny objects in details at close range? Now, some people actually like to do that. They want to look at the stamps, etc. So if you want to reduce their short sight and make them normal sighted, you're taking away that ability. And some people really treasure that. So you have to ask that. That's the first key question. And then the second, assuming it's no, then you have to ask them, do you want your short sight reduced so you can read without glasses and put glasses on for distance, or eliminated so you become like everybody else and we're reading glasses for close work? So are we okay with these questions? So based on the answers, obviously you know what to choose. Yeah? Fair?
Yeah, just from a personal perspective, being -5.5
Moderate, yeah.
with obviously glasses with very focus, and I can see distance and I can read and do most things, but I still find it useful to do this.
Well, exactly.
Well, I think if you asked anybody that question, I've never had anybody who wants to stay myopic. So I wonder when I do get mine done, I'll be the first one to ever say, no, I want to stay -5.5, please. And they go, no, never done that in my life before. It's not been heard of. Have you done it?
I had a patient who was relatively young, same age as me, and he basically was -7, and we talked about bringing him down to -2, and then he phoned me about a week before the operation and said, I've thought about it, I want to stay -7 because he does microelectronics.
Yeah.
Under magnifying glasses in, I want to see where I am. So he ended up -7 both eyes.
Yeah.
And the relatively young patient, he was
Yes.
a conscious decision about it. So you do occasionally.
Yeah.
get some
You do get some. That's why you have to ask the question, because you don't want to be, you might think that you're giving them a better outcome, but they may not appreciate. That's why it's an important question.
I
Okay.
think there is one slight caveat. Certainly in my hands,
Yes.
the higher refractive errors, you can't be quite so exact. When I'm saying I'm going to try and leave you -0.25.
Oh, sure.
You're going dot
Absolutely.
to either side of that. And hopefully not hypermetropic, but
Yeah, and cross patients ring you up to tell you
Yeah.
afterwards.
so I always find myself reading out the line and the
Yes,
consent saying,
yes.
although we aim for the best,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There
The
we go.
higher refractive error.
Sure. We can't promise an outcome, and for people who need to be promised an outcome, then we have to be ready to take a second step. Either bioptics, laser on the cornea, or supplementary or piggyback implant. Okay, so are we all right with these basic premises? But actually, this answers most of your questions already. And like every time I do a cataract list, I have to choose an implant for each patient. And it would be wonderful if these things can already be discussed. And so on the day, there's already a ring around the implant and that, discussed, and patient wants this. So wouldn't that be better? Because sometimes you spend 5-10 minutes discussing with the patient on the day. Even this morning.
Tried that in the past, and the surgeon found out
Yeah.
that they got a different answer from the patient who'd had the discussion listed it before.
Okay.
It wasn't consistent anyway.
All right. Well, anyway, something to work on, to aim towards.
But I like your pieces of writing. I think the way you've written it out is very nice, and whether we put that into some sort of thing for the patient that they could read and come out, I think it's very nicely written, what you've,
Thank you.
the options you've given.
I think I've kind of put that already in one paragraph. Last time we
haven't
did it.
changed the booklet.
I
for it
know.
yet. It's all to happen, and I think this is nice writing.
Thank you. I will let you have a copy. Okay, so now we move on to a subject which is a little less well understood in terms of toric implants. So I think here we are. These are the private patients, sometimes with no cataracts. So correcting astigmatism is essential for patients seeking spectacle independence. But we don't offer refractive service on the NHS, and patients whose astigmatism, which will not be made worse after cataract surgery, don't really need that corrected, okay? So they are well used to it, they were made with that astigmatism, and the downside if you want to correct the astigmatism is that it requires considerable chair time preparing them for surgery. Then before surgery, unless you have something like a Callisto system which marks it for you in real time during surgery, then you have to have them sitting up and marking 0 and 180, because when they lie down, you know, they cyclotort. So, you know, that's a lot of time. And then afterwards, the toric implants can rotate post-op as well. And then you need to see them like quickly, rather than 5 weeks at the opticians, and then you might need to take them back to theatres to rotate. So it's a major undertaking. So I think we've kind of decided that unless they really need it, then we won't use toric. So who needs them then? So those are the people whose astigmatism will be made worse following cataract surgery. Well, I'm hoping that nobody would use a very large wound close to the visual axis and cause a lot of surgically induced astigmatism. So what am I talking about then? So firstly, when we are measuring astigmatism, then we're measuring corneal astigmatism and really just the anterior astigmatism. Now, if you use the pentacam, then you get to look at the posterior corneal curvature as well. We don't need to worry about spectacle astigmatism in the sense that we are not dealing with that, because the spectacle astigmatism is a combination of corneal and lenticular and retinal astigmatism. Okay, so once we remove the cataract, then the major part of the astigmatism is from your the anterior curvature of your cornea. Okay, so therefore, you know, sometimes you will say, oh, you know, this patient has 5 diopters of spectacle astigmatism, and then you look at the cornea. Actually, it's not as much. Then you don't need to worry. Okay. So let's talk about masked corneal astigmatism. In most cases, your spectacle astigmatism will match your corneal astigmatism in magnitude and axis. So in these cases, you don't need to worry, because you're not going to create a surprise for the patient following cataract surgery. You can simply use a spherical implant. But there will be some rare cases where there is little or no spectacle astigmatism, but significant corneal astigmatism. So what's going on there? It is because the lenticular astigmatism is balancing the corneal astigmatism, and the moment you remove the cataract, you expose the corneal astigmatism. And it is for these cases that they really ought to have toric implants, because otherwise they'll be in shock. You know, I've never had astigmatism. You operate on me and suddenly I have 5 diopters. Well, but they did have 5 diopters of corneal astigmatism, but they also had 5 diopters of lenticular astigmatism, which is equal and opposite, and they were balancing one another. Okay, so any questions on astigmatism?
Just on the torics, I mean, at the moment, as I know, the only people who put in a toric is Andy, gone, and me, still here. I only do them because nobody else would. I'm not really very interested in them.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I've just done them on a day, and that's it. I haven't started seeing them, you know, or sending somebody else to see. They just get it done and they walk away. And I get seen in 6 weeks, because I may not be here next week or whatever.
Yes.
And you know, it hasn't been.
There hasn't been a problem, yeah.
But in terms of the process, I mean, it will be the same for you, because if you do one, you're not going to be here next week either.
Well, that's why I need to have a team,
So,
you
you
know,
know, it's
supporting me.
whether we have any kind of arrangement on changing the, you know, do we bring everybody who's had a toric lens back in within 7 days to an optom who checks their refraction, and then if it's not happening,
Well,
then they get back on the table. with
that
somebody
is,
else.
you know, that is standard practice, that they do need to be seen, you know, not at 5 weeks, but you know, one week.
How do you work out how to change your axis?
Oh, there is a website, and if you're malrotated by 10 degrees, then you lose 1/3 of the effectiveness. And you know, the smaller diopters of astigmatism, toric implants is less important, but the high ones, then they,
yeah.
you know, they just need to rotate a little, and then you know, it's all messed up.
But practically, Christopher, you know, you're not coming back and I'm not coming back. So do we even bother? Or we just put the toric in and agree that we hope for the best? As a unit, because if it's likely that we would have weeks with neither of us here.
Yes, but there, you know, for example, for me, you know, I am in constant contact with Nick Hu
And
when
he
I'm
will
not here.
rotate it for you. I mean,
Well, we haven't had that. The reality is that we will not use many torics.
No, we don't.
We won't, because you know, if you apply the strict criteria that you only give them to people who you will be exposing the astigmatism, you probably only need less than 6 a year, I would imagine. Yeah.
I mean, I'm only aware of one on my list at the moment. So can I use Nico then?
Nico is
and then we as well.
What? I can't rotate it.
no, but you can refract. Thank goodness. Okay, so well, let's just.
To rotate it with the laser.
This is recorded, by the way. Okay, thank you. Right. Okay. So can we move on to another topic called monovision and mini monovision? I think you kind of all know about this. So let's look at monovision, and I think we can consider monovision for patients about to go through cataract surgery if they've already enjoyed and tolerated monovision with contact lenses previously. Now, if they haven't enjoyed monovision previously, it's quite difficult to test whether they're going to be tolerant because cataracts have already developed. Okay. Monovision is tolerated by 2/3 of the population, and you do need to use the dominant eye for distance and non-dominant eye for near. There is another trick which is very, very useful. It's called mini monovision, whereby you correct one eye for distance and the other eye about -1, -1.25. Now the good thing is that it's tolerated by everybody, more or less, and you don't need to find out which eye is dominant and which eye is non-dominant. So this is one trick, which will give you partial spectacle independence, you know, without spending too much money. And you know, we may adopt this, you know, we might say this will become the standard of care, that everybody will have one eye for distance and one eye for intermediate.
And Christoph, when you're talking about making someone above, when you're doing the full monovision, are you aiming for -2.5, -3?
You know, it would be, yes, and it would be whatever they're used to with their contact lenses. But you still have to explain it may not be as good as before, because with the natural lens, even in, you know, at my kind of age, I still have one diopter of accommodation. And once my natural lens is removed, then even if you get the same prescription, then it is less effective because, you know, you've got one diopter less in each eye.
Yeah.
Okay, so fancy lenses. That's just one slide, okay? I don't want to make it too complicated. So if we're talking about bifocal or multifocal, nowadays we're talking about trifocals, okay? So there are 3 foci: distance, near, and intermediate. With these lenses, whatever make, however fancy, they all get glare and halos. Okay, so not very suitable for people who are very particular about things. Okay, and perhaps not suitable for people who do a lot of night driving. But having said that, the glare and halos usually disappear after a few weeks to a few months. Okay, and then if they finally can't tolerate that, you know, in the private sector, at 1 year, then you might say, okay, do you want to have an exchange? But bear in mind that you won't be able to read without glasses. And it appears that the majority will say, okay, well, I'm going to put up with the glare and halos because I don't want reading glasses. Okay, so they're actually quite safe, but anyway, this is just for information because we're not going to be offering this in this building. Then the other thing is EDOF. You might have heard of this, extended depth of field. There's various technology for this, but usually EDOF lenses will give you much less glare and halos, but only give you about 1 diopter of accommodation extension. So it's intermediate, okay? However, think about this. If you're going for mini monovision, so one eye 0, one is -1, and then you extend your normal sighted eye from 0 to -1, you've got that range, and the other one becomes -1 to -2, they are fairly spectacle independent. So that's something to think about, okay?
So you put that into both eyes in that circumstance?
EDOF in each eye, but one eye aiming for 0, the other eye aiming for -1. And actually, we've done that with a patient here, because I think she was a patient who came from, where was she coming from, Wick or somewhere?
Yes, far away.
And then And then my flight was cancelled and I had to leave a little early, and then she came here and I couldn't see her. So eventually it was Raina. Raina decided that they would give us the lenses just like normal toric costs. And then we did that, and then she's really happy. So basically she had like refractive cataract surgery.
And what price would it be normally? An EDOF lens, how much would it cost normally?
A small number of hundreds of pounds in this country. The pricing of these things depend on the market. So in many countries they are very, very expensive because sometimes they have to kind of give something back to the institution or even the surgeon. You know, it's all a little bit dark. Okay, so now forget about accommodating lenses which move back and forth with ciliary body action, because they don't actually work, because after a few weeks your capsular bag is already contracted, it can't move. Right, so we can summarize now. So for hypertropes and emmetropes, please aim for emmetropia as a default. For myopic patients, ask if they want to retain their ability to read. Do not assume they want to be converted to normal sight. For high myopia, ask if they want to retain the ability to examine small objects in detail at very close range. If not, do they want to become normal sighted and wear reading glasses, or have their short sight reduced so they can read without glasses but wear distance glasses? Of course, I mean, these are aims. You know, just like the title, we don't always get what we aim for. Toric IOLs are indicated when cataract surgery will unmask corneal astigmatism, previously balanced by equal and opposite lens astigmatism. So this is all you need to know for this building. And this is the team from Theatre C today. As I say, you know, I've completed 1 year service here, so they allowed me to take a picture.
Looks like a nice theatre.
Well, they say Theatre C is the preferred theatre because of the ceiling mounted or something like that. Is that right?
Where is they? The surgeons or the nurses?
I think surgeons and nurses for cataract surgery anyway.
Management.
Really? Oh, okay, fair enough.
Jewel in their crown.
Yeah, so I mean, for you it's different because you need that very long working distance, which I was forced to use the other day, and I stretched I became a giraffe. Okay, so happy to take any questions, and I think I've only just managed to put one person to sleep just now, so that's not too bad.
That's very good.
Right.
What do you suggest
Yeah.
in terms of doing the sequential images if somebody's very high myop with very high astigmatism?
I think the same principle applies. If their corneal astigmatism matches their spectacle astigmatism in axis, and you know the strength is more or less the same, then you don't need to worry. Because I don't think we ought to be, you know, we're not providing refractive surgery.
No. Just that in between time where they can't really wear their glasses and they can't be without either.
Oh, well, I mean, that's why, you know, that is actually a special case for doing both eyes on the same day, because, you know, for sure, they will really be suffering from day one onwards. And it's unkind to put people through that.
So on that, I did have a patient who was a high myop, wanted to be left good to see to read without glasses.
Yeah,
So wanted to be left about -2,
yeah.
but wanted to drive the car the next day. So that's just a lose situation.
Well, they could use their unoperated eye.
No, because they were having bilateral.
Oh,
It was just a lose. You can't have everything.
no. Well,
Lens
you
with
can,
glasses.
you know, but you need to use fancy lenses that we don't have access to.
Can you just talk about you talked about toric lens and
Yes.
worrying about the corneal astigmatism and ignoring the retinal astigmatism. Can you talk about the retinal astigmatism?
I can't. I'm not a retinal person.
I
Can't
mean,
you see?
Is this,
It's usually the magnitude is not huge.
Lenticular astigmatism.
pardon?
Lenticular astigmatism.
Retinal.
Well,
There is retinal
there's
astigmatism.
3 types. I just want to know about the retinal type.
I don't know about
Well, it's just that, you know, like if you think about your retina, okay, so
On
it's
and
not actually, it's not spherical like your the bowl in the Humphreys visual field is squished a bit.
Yeah. And And more
That's
difficult
all.
if you've got a staphylomer and stuff.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Chris, what's your thoughts on operating on access and optically the corneal incisions?
I don't think much of that. I used to do temporal corneal on one side, and then after rescrubbing, I'd do a sclerotunnel on the other side, just for the strength of it, not so much for the astigmatic neutrality. You know, in case the patient has fallen, already had both eyes done, you know, just to retain one eye with a really, really good wound.
That's when you're doing bilateral.
Yeah,
you're doing
but now, you know, I just do temporal,
Mhm.
and you know the cornea
for everyone.
for everyone.
Yeah.
Like the cornea, the temporal part here has a tail, so that means this is quite a bigger distance away from the central cornea than up here. And as far as I'm concerned, I consider my SIA or surgically induced astigmatism to be close to zero. So that's what I do. And I no longer believe in LRIs because they cause ocular discomfort from denervation, and also the effects are unpredictable and not long lasting. So if I really want to correct astigmatism, it will be a toric implant.
What level of induced corneal astigmatism should we be thinking about toric IOLs? How much corneal astigmatism?
Ah, wow, you got a powerful question there. I don't know is the answer. I think more than one would be quite a surprise to patients. Yeah. But then you might say, okay, well, let's do two. Nobody would argue with that. But I think more if they've been used to zero, if you give them one, I don't think they'll be very happy.
Can I suggest
Nobody listen anyway for toric.
that if we do torics for anyone with a SIL of 1 and over, we will not be in line with other NHS hospitals and torics.
Should we say two then?
I think that to go at 1 is too much. If we went at 3, we would be
It's three that we have at the moment, isn't it?
3 would be definitely reasonable because it would keep our numbers down.
Mm-hmm.
2 is, I would hate to see how many 2s we were going to have.
Very few.
But
Very
you-
few.
But you're only talking about the exposed.
Yes.
Exposed.
Yes.
Not all the twos.
No, the twos will not get done if they are used to twos.
So yes, if we had 2 on the SIL on the biometry and it was in the glasses, we would ignore it.
That's right.
If we had 2 on the SIL on the biometry and we had nothing in glasses, but they were coming in with 636 on any vision, I mean, what does that mean? You know, when they're not working. Now you could say we nearly always have a refraction. So yeah, but it is slightly difficult.
I would say, you know, I don't think anybody would put me in jail. If I say, okay, 1, maybe they'll put me in jail, but 2, I don't think so. And the numbers will be very, very small. I promise you. Really?
Oh no, not arguing. I'm just smiling.
Yeah, because we're no longer doing the high sills anymore. We're doing the exposed sills, and they're small numbers. Promise. Promise, ma'am. Okay.
Can I make a comment? You started off about the A constants, and we have been using the wrong one, Lorraine. And there was a lot
Oh,
of talk
let's stop
about
recording first.
all the men